On live TV, Joy Behar thought she could laugh at Cruz's faith. The audience chuckled. The cameras kept rolling. But then Cruz leaned forward, his face unshaken. And what came out of his mouth wasn't just a reply, it was a warning. The room went silent. The studio lights burned hot, casting a sterile glow over the set of The View, the audience. A mix of eager tourists and loyal fans buzzed with anticipation. It was another Tuesday morning in New York City, and the show's hosts Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah N., and Sunny Hostin were in their element, trading quips and hot takes with the confidence of seasoned performers. The guest that day was no stranger to the spotlight either, Senator Ted Cruz, the Texas Republican known for his sharp tongue and unyielding principles. The stage was set for a clash, and everyone in the room could feel it. Joy Behar, perched at the end of the table, wore her trademark smirk. Her red glasses glinted under the lights, and her posture leaned back. Arms crossed radiated the kind of casual bravado that had made her a daytime TV legend. She'd sparred with politicians before, from both sides of the aisle, and she relished the chance to land a zinger. Today, she had her sights set on Cruz. The topic had started innocently enough, a discussion about the role of religion in politics, a subject that always stirred the pot. The hosts had been tossing around opinions, some thoughtful, others provocative. When Joy saw her opening, she leaned forward, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "So, Ted," she said, pausing for effect, "you're out there preaching family values, quoting scripture like it's your job. What's with all the Bible thumping? You think that's gonna win you points with the millennials?" The line was sharp, delivered with the cadence of a stand-up comic. The audience erupted in laughter, a wave of chuckles and claps that filled the studio. It was the kind of moment Joy lived for, a jab that landed, a crowd that roared. But Cruz didn't laugh. He didn't even flinch. The senator, seated across from her in a navy suit, his tie perfectly knotted, sat perfectly still. His dark eyes locked onto Joy's, unblinking, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. The laughter faded, replaced by an uneasy quiet. The other hosts exchanged glances, sensing something had shifted. Even the audience, still buzzing from Joy's quip, began to settle. Their eyes darting between the two figures at the center of the storm. Cruz leaned forward, resting both hands on the table. His fingers interlaced, steady as stone, and his voice, when he spoke, was low and deliberate, each word chosen with precision. "Joy," he said, his Texas drawl cutting through the silence, "you can mock me all you want. You can take shots at my policies, my record, my beard if you feel like it, but mocking my faith? That's not just about me. That's mocking millions of Americans who believe what I believe. And I'm not going to sit here and let that slide." The room froze. The air felt heavier, the lights harsher. The audience, caught off guard, sat in stunned silence. Even the cameras, operated by seasoned professionals who'd seen it all, seemed to pause, their lenses zooming in on Cruz's face. His expression was unshaken, his jaw set, his eyes burning with a quiet intensity that demanded attention. This wasn't the polished politician delivering a soundbite. This was a man defending something deeper, something personal. Joy, for her part, tried to recover. She tilted her head, forcing a chuckle, and tossed out another quip. "Oh, come on, Ted, it's just a joke. Lighten up." But the words fell flat, swallowed by the weight of the moment. The audience didn't laugh this time. A few shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes flickering between Joy's strained smile and Cruz's unrelenting gaze. He wasn't done. "It's not a joke," Cruz said, his voice rising just enough to carry without shouting. "Faith isn't a punchline, Joy. It's not a prop you pull out to score points on a talk show. It's the foundation of people's lives. It's what gets families through loss, soldiers through war, workers through days when they don't know how they'll pay their bills. It's what holds communities together when everything else falls apart. You want to talk about policy? Fine, you want to talk about politics? I'm game. But when you mock faith, you're not just mocking me, you're insulting the very people who make up the heart of this country." The silence that followed was deafening. The other hosts, usually quick to jump in, sat back, their faces a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Whoopi Goldberg, her hands folded in front of her, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Sarah N., who often played the peacemaker, looked down at her notes, as if searching for a way to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Sunny Hostin, ever the lawyer, watched Cruz with a mix of curiosity and respect, her pen hovering over her notepad. In the audience, reactions varied. A middle-aged woman in a red sweater nodded slowly, her lips pressed together in quiet agreement. A younger man in a baseball cap whispered to his friend, his brow furrowed. Others sat stone still, unsure how to process what they'd just witnessed. The studio, moments ago alive with laughter, now felt like a courtroom awaiting a verdict. Joy, for the first time that morning, seemed at a loss. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of discomfort. She opened her mouth, then closed it as if reconsidering her next move. The segment was running out of time, and the producers stationed in the control booth were already signaling for a commercial break. But the moment lingered, heavy and unresolved. As the cameras panned out and the show cut to ads, the audience remained quiet, the weight of Cruz's words hanging in the air. Backstage, the crew exchanged glances, sensing that something extraordinary had just happened. The senator, still seated, took a sip of water, his expression calm but resolute. Joy, meanwhile, busied herself with her notes, avoiding eye contact with her guest. By the time the show resumed, the topic had shifted to something lighter: holiday recipes, maybe, or a celebrity scandal, but the energy in the room was different. The hosts were more cautious, their banter less sharp. Cruz, for his part, answered questions with his usual precision, but there was an undercurrent of intensity that hadn't been there before. The audience, too, seemed more attentive, as if waiting for another spark to ignite. As the episode wrapped and the credits rolled, the clip of Cruz's response was already making its way online. A producer, scrolling through her phone in the control booth, noticed the first post on X, a 30-second snippet of the exchange, captioned, "Ted Cruz shuts down Joy Behar on The View." Within minutes, it had hundreds of shares, then thousands. Comments poured in, some praising Cruz's conviction, others debating Joy's intent, and a few marveling at the raw intensity of the moment. By the time the crew began breaking down the set, the clip was trending, sparking a firestorm of reactions across the internet. The backstory: to understand why that moment hit so hard, you had to know the players. Ted Cruz was no stranger to controversy. The senator from Texas had built a career on taking bold stands, often against the grain of Washington's polished consensus. His supporters admired his unapologetic defense of his principles. His critics called him divisive, a showman who thrived on conflict. But one thing was undeniable: Cruz knew how to command a room. His background as a champion debater at Princeton and Harvard Law had honed his ability to think on his feet, to turn an opponent's words against them with surgical precision. He'd faced hostile crowds before town halls, Senate hearings, even late-night comedy shows, and he rarely backed down. Faith, though, was more than a talking point for Cruz. It was personal. Raised in a Christian household, he'd spoken often about how his beliefs shaped his life, from his marriage to his approach to public service. He wasn't one to wear his faith on his sleeve for political gain, but he didn't shy away from it either. To him, it was a bedrock, a source of strength that had guided him through personal and professional storms. So when Joy Behar took her shot, it wasn't just an attack on his politics, it was an attack on something fundamental to who he was. Joy Behar, on the other hand, was a master of provocation. A comedian by trade, she'd spent decades honing her craft, first in stand-up clubs and later as a co-host on The View. Her sharp wit and liberal leanings made her a fan favorite among the show's audience, but they also made her a lightning rod for criticism. She thrived on pushing buttons, especially when it came to conservative guests. To Joy, the studio was her stage, and every segment was a chance to land a punch. She'd taken on politicians, pundits, and celebrities, rarely meeting a target she couldn't rattle. But this time, she'd miscalculated. The audience, too, played a role in the moment. They weren't just a backdrop. They were a microcosm of the country, diverse in age, background, and belief. Some had come for entertainment, others for affirmation of their views. When Joy's joke landed, it was the reflex of a crowd conditioned to laugh at sharp one-liners. But when Cruz pushed back, he spoke to something deeper, something that resonated with those who felt their values were too often dismissed as punchlines. The aftermath, as the clip spread online, it took on a life of its own. On X, users dissected every moment, the smirk on Joy's face, the steel in Cruz's voice, the silence that followed. Conservative commentators hailed it as a masterclass in standing up to media bias. "Cruz just reminded everyone why you don't mess with faith," one pundit tweeted, attaching the video. Others saw it as a broader indictment of a culture that often treated belief with mockery. "This isn't about politics," another user wrote. "It's about respect." Beher crossed a line and Cruz called it out, but not everyone agreed. Some defended Joy, arguing that her comment was just a joke, part of the rough and tumble of daytime TV. "Cruz is too sensitive," one user posted. "If you can't handle a little ribbing, maybe politics isn't for you." Others accused him of grandstanding, turning a lighthearted moment into a soapbox for his agenda. The debate raged on, splitting along familiar lines: left versus right, secular versus religious, free speech versus respect. In the days that followed, the moment became a cultural touchstone. News outlets picked up the story with headlines ranging from Cruz clashes with Beher over faith jab to The View's latest controversy sparks national debate. Pundits on cable news replayed the clip, analyzing Cruz's tone, Joy's reaction, and the audience's silence. Some praised Cruz for his restraint, noting that he hadn't raised his voice or resorted to personal attacks. Others criticized Joy for doubling down instead of acknowledging the weight of her words. Behind the scenes, the fallout was more complex. At The View, producers held a tense meeting to discuss the segment. Some argued that Joy's joke was in line with the show's edgy tone. Others worried that it had alienated viewers who saw faith as off-limits. The hosts, too, were divided. Whoopi, known for her bluntness, reportedly told Joy to own it, but suggested she avoid similar jabs in the future. Sarah, ever the diplomat, pushed for a follow-up segment to address the controversy. While Sunny argued that the show should stand its ground, for Cruz, the moment was a turning point. His team saw the clip's viral spread as an opportunity to connect with voters who felt overlooked by coastal elites. In interviews, he doubled down, framing the exchange as a defense of everyday Americans. "I'm not here to play games," he told a radio host the next day. "When someone attacks faith, they're attacking the values that hold this country together. I'm not going to let that go unanswered." Joy, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. In a rare moment of reflection, she addressed the controversy on the next episode, stopping short of an apology but acknowledging that her comment had struck a nerve. "Look, I'm a comedian," she said, her tone softer than usual. "I make jokes, that's my job. But I hear you, some things hit harder than intended." The audience response was mixed, with some clapping in support and others sitting in silence, still processing the previous day's exchange. The bigger picture, the clash between Cruz and Beher, wasn't just a TV moment, it was a snapshot of a divided nation. Faith, once a unifying force, had become a flashpoint in a culture war where every word was scrutinized, every joke a potential landmine. For some, Cruz's response was a necessary pushback against a media that too often dismissed deeply held beliefs. For others, it was an overreaction, a politician seizing a moment to score points with his base. But beyond the headlines, the moment resonated because it touched on something universal: the need for respect. Cruz's words weren't just about defending his own faith, they were about defending the right of millions to believe without being ridiculed. In a world of 24/7 news cycles and viral outrage, that message struck a chord, reminding people that not everything was fair game for a punchline. As the clip continued to circulate, it sparked conversations far beyond the studio. In churches, coffee shops, and living rooms, people debated where the line should be drawn. Was faith off limits? Was humor a valid way to challenge power? And what did it mean to stand up for what you believe in, even when the room was against you? For Ted Cruz, the moment was a reminder of why he'd entered public life. For Joy Behar, it was a rare misstep in a career built on sharp wit. And for the country watching, it was a mirror, reflecting the tensions that simmered beneath the surface of every heated debate. In the end, the silence that followed Cruz's words spoke louder than any joke could. It was the sound of a line being drawn, a challenge issued, and a nation forced to listen.